Hi everyone, welcome to the Getting Started webinar. You should be able to see on your screen the demonstration account I've set up for today. The name of the business is Payroll Plus. The areas we will cover today include adding an employee, processing a pay run, some key business and employee level settings, and lastly, we'll take a quick look at the employee self-service portal. Okay, so on the Payroll Dashboard, you can see the 5 main tabs. The Employees tab. Here you will see a list of all the employees you have in the payroll account, and there is a bit of information about each employee as well. You can see their name, a job title if they have one, employment type, pay schedule, and the last time that they were paid. The Pay Runs tab. Here you will see a list of all the pay runs that have been processed in the payroll account. There are a few details for each pay run as well. You can see the pay period, the paid date, pay run status, pay schedule, the number of employees, total hours, and the gross and net wages. The Approved Leave tab. This is a monthly view of all the approved leave in the payroll account. You can click on any of the leave requests in order to see more information. We can see Brandon Mensley has a leave request for the 25th and 26th of May. His leave balance is 90.26 hours, approved leave 15.2 hours, his available balance is 75.06 hours, and the leave required is 15.2 hours. By hovering over the approved icon, we can see that the leave request was approved by myself and the date and the time. The Reports tab. Here we have a full suite of all the available reports, and they are grouped into the following categories: payroll, employee, time and attendance, ATO reporting, and report packs. The Payroll Settings tab. This is an important section to be aware of, as this is where you can configure all the business level settings that are specific to your business. There are a number of default settings in place when you first sign up, but you can change any of these settings and add new ones if required. Now we will go ahead and look at how we can manually add an employee to the payroll file via the Employee tab. There are a couple of ways you can add employees to the business. If you click on the down arrow beside the Add Employee option, you can see them. You can start the employee self-setup. This entails you entering a minimum amount of information for each employee. The employee will then be sent an email prompting them to enter their data themselves. You can import employees or export employees. This is handy if you'd like to get a template to add employees to use the import option. But today we're going to click on the Add Employee option, which will launch the 4-step employee wizard. The first section is the personal details. You will need to add in all the personal details for your employee here. I'm going to go ahead and enter this employee's details. I've added the name, date of birth, and gender. If the employee does not want their gender specified for any reason, you can select the unspecified option. You can begin to type in the employee's address and select it when it appears on the drop-down. There is an option to enter a postal address if required as well. If that is the case, simply untick the postal address is the same as residential address here. You can then enter an email address and phone number. The employee notification is how you will notify your employees that their payslip is available to view or download. there are a couple of options. None and manual are the same thing, and this means the employee will not receive a notification. The manual setting can be used by businesses that print out their payslips and manually hand them to employees. If the employee does not want to receive a notification, simply select none. SMS means the employee will receive an SMS notification, and if this option is selected, you'll need to make sure you have a valid mobile phone number entered for the employee, and also be aware that there is a charge per SMS per employee. Email is free, and the employee will receive an email to notify them their payslip is available. The last option here is for self-service. Selecting yes for this option is granting access to the employee for the employee's self-service portal. The employee will then be able to do things like view payslips, apply for leave and expenses from the portal. They will also be able to download the WorkZone app to their smartphone, available on iOS and Android, where they will be able to perform these tasks straight from their phone. The next step of the setup is the employment details. You can enter all the employment details for your employee here. If you have an award installed in the business and you would like to pay the employee under this award, you can do that straight from the setup. You will firstly need to select the award and then the relevant employment agreement for the employee. You can see here that the pay rate template, employment type, and primary pay category fields have all auto-filled. You will also notice that the option for timesheets has auto-populated to use timesheets. When an employee is being paid under an award, they will also generally be linked to a pay condition rule set, and so timesheets are required for rules to calculate correctly. If you aren't going to pay the employee under an award, you can simply select No Award and then set the rates manually. I'm going to select No Award for this employee and select to manually set the rates, i.e. I do not want this employee paid using a pay rate template. The Pay Condition Rule Set drop-down will list the award rule sets that are currently within the business. I do not want to select a rule set for this employee. Rule sets are an advanced feature, and we won't go into those today, but they are incredibly powerful if you are on the advanced plan and you would like to automate certain shift conditions. If you have selected an award for your employee, the rule set will automatically link to the employee agreement, and this will confirm that you are paying shift conditions as per Fair Work. You will then need to enter a start date for the employee and also select the employment type. I'm going to select full-time for this employee. The next field is where you can enter the primary location for the employee. You can set up different locations in the payroll file. They can be physical locations like Sydney or Brisbane, or departmental locations like sales and marketing. The employee's primary location is where the costings for their earnings will be attributed to by default if no other location is selected. I'm going to select Payroll Plus. You'll also notice the Office and Warehouse option. You can also add a new location from here. Alternatively, you can go to Payroll Settings, Locations page, and add new locations here. Next, you can select the pay schedule for the employee. This is the frequency you will be paying the employee. We have 3 pay schedule frequencies available: weekly, fortnightly, and monthly. These pay schedules are available to stay in line with the 3 tax tables that are available from the ATO. You can add as many extra pay schedules as you need. I'm going to select the weekly pay schedule for this employee. You will then need to enter the pay rate for the employee. You will have the option to add the rate as per hour, per annum, or per day. I'm going to select 60,000 per annum, and I'm going to enter 38 hours per week. This is equivalent to a 7.6 hour day, but you can add the number of hours that are relevant to your particular business. So if your employee works an 8-hour day, you can pop the 40-hour week in this field. You'll notice the Use Standard Business Daily Hours box here. By ticking this box, you are telling the system to apply the hours that have been set for the business on the Payroll Settings Details page. The standard hours per day is reading the business details page, which is currently set for this business at 7.6 hours per day. If I want the employee to work an 8-hour day, I can untick the Use Standard Business Daily Hours box and enter 8 in the field here. If you would like to revert to business standard hours, just tick the box here. Then you can select the primary pay category for the employee. The pay category is where you can configure things like super, PAYG, and leave. I'm going to select salary for this employee. I'll just mention here, because I'm using a per annum pay rate, if I was to select a per hour pay category, you will notice this warning that appears here. That is because the per hour pay category is conflicting with the per annum pay rate. So a tip is, if you're using a per annum pay rate, you should use a per annum pay category. You'll see that the warning has now been removed. An example of a different pay category is the casual ordinary hours. A casual employee will generally not accrue annual or personal carers leave, and so they have a 25% rate loading added to their base rate. This pay category is default set to add that 25% rate loading. You can change this if you like, or you can create your own pay category and set your own specifications. This next field is where you can select a leave allowance template. Leave allowance templates will allow you to set different types and rates of leave accruals for different groups of employees. If you want a group of employees to accrue 4 weeks of leave per year and a different group to accrue 6 weeks of leave per year, you can create a leave allowance template for both scenarios and then link each of the employees to the relevant template. Another benefit of leave allowance templates is if there are ever any changes to be made, you can just update the template and the changes will apply to all the employees that are linked to that template. A great example of a leave allowance template is the casual leave allowance template. This is a default template set up in the system, and this can be used for casual employees as it is set to not accrue annual or personal carers leave, but it is set to accrue long service leave that casual employees are entitled to. Today I'm not going to attach my employee to a leave allowance template. However, if you have created your own custom leave allowance template or one is associated to the award, you can select it here. And lastly, you can select whether or not you want your employees to use timesheets. As we discussed earlier, if you have attached an employee to an award, it will automatically select to use timesheets. This is because for rule sets and automatic pay conditions to apply, timesheets must be used. I will select for this employee to use timesheets. Once all the employment details have been entered, you can click on Next. The third part of the employee wizard is the banking and super. The first part of the bank details is how you are going to pay the employee. There are a couple of options here. You have BPay. If the employee has the details of a BPay account they would like part or all of their wages to go into, you can add this in here. The next one is cash or check. Then you have manual deposit, and this is for businesses that are logging in to their internet banking and transferring each employee's earnings one by one. And the last option is electronic. This will enable this employee to be included in an ABA file. The ABA file can then be downloaded directly from a finalized pay run, and once the file is uploaded to your internet banking, all the earnings will be transferred in one go to each employee included in the file. This is a handy time-saving feature for businesses with more than a couple of employees to save you going to each employee's bank account individually in order to deposit their earnings. Once you select the account type, you may also need to add some additional information depending on the payment method you've chosen. For example, if you select the BPay option, you will need to enter the name, biller code, and customer reference number. And if you select either manual deposit or electronic, you will need to enter the employee's bank details. The next step is to add in the details of the super fund the employee has provided you with. If the employee hasn't given you the details of a super fund they would like to contribute to, you can skip this and add the details at a later date. If you do have the super fund details, or you would like to select the business's default fund for the employee, you can set this up by clicking on the Choose Super Fund option. You will then be given 3 tabs you can select from to enter the details. You have the Regulated tab, the Self-Managed Super Fund tab, or the Employer Nominated Fund tab. The Employer Nominated Fund option is where you can select the business's default fund for the employee. This option will only appear if you have a default fund set up for the business. I will show you a little later on where you can go to do this. This option can be selected if the employee hasn't given you the details of a super fund they would like to contribute to. If the employee has given you the details of a self-managed super fund they would like to contribute to, you will need to enter the details on this tab here. You will need to enter the fund name, ABN, account name, BSB, and account number. Also the electronic service address or ESA and the fund email. There is also a field for an external ID if required, and all of these fields are mandatory apart from the external ID. And lastly, we have the Regulated Super Fund tab. You will need to search for the fund by entering either the fund name, ABN, or USI into the search field. You will then be presented with a list of funds that match the detail you popped into the search. Make sure you select the correct one and the USI matches. Once you have selected the required fund name, this will auto-populate back on the Employee's Super Details page, the fund name, ABN, and product code, which is the USI. You can then pop in the member number and save. Now that banking and super are complete, you can click on Next, which will take you to the last part of the wizard, which is the tax file declaration. Here you can enter the employee's tax file number. If the employee hasn't provided their tax file number, there are a few options you can select from as to why you don't have the tax file number yet. Here you can select the relevant option. The system will warn you after 28 days if you have employees in the business that still haven't provided their tax file number. You can enter a previous surname if required, and then you will need to configure the tax calculation options for the employee. The system has default set the 2 most common options for you: Australian resident for tax purposes and claim tax-free threshold. There are other options available as well if needed. You can click on the pencil icon here and tick any of the options that are relevant to this employee. There are options for if your employee is a working holiday maker or has an accumulated STSL debt, and you can even add in the Medicare levy exemption as well. You can then pop in the date the tax file declaration was signed. And this last option here, Lodge with ATO, will allow you to electronically lodge this form with the ATO straight from the software. In order to use this option, you will need to enable the payroll file for electronic lodgement to the ATO first. I will show you a little later on where and how to do this. I won't lodge this tax file declaration today. So once all that information has been entered, you can click on Done, and this will complete the employee setup. Once the employee has been successfully added to the payroll file, you will be taken to this screen here where you can go straight to the employee's file. You can start to add another employee, or by clicking on Home, you'll be taken back to the payroll dashboard. Back here on the payroll dashboard, if we go to the Employees tab, you can now see the employee that we just entered. You can see here some of the employee information, but the last paid column is showing that the employee has not been paid yet. Once we include this employee in a pay run, that will change and it will show the date of the last pay run the employee was included in. I will come back after we have processed the pay run and show you how that updates. Okay, so that completes the first part of the presentation today, and we will now move on to creating a pay run. From the payroll dashboard, you will need to click on the New Pay Run option. This pop-up screen will appear where you will need to configure the details of the pay run you would like to process. You will need to select the pay schedule and then the pay period end date. I'm going to select weekly. When creating a pay run for the first time, you will need to select an ending date that is in line with the work week you have set up on the business details page, and then the system will automatically pre-populate the dates for subsequent pay runs based on the pay schedule frequency. The work week I have set up is Monday to Sunday, so this means that my pay runs should end on a Sunday. You will then need to select the date the pay run is going to be paid. The next two options here are available if you need to process an ad hoc or out-of-cycle pay run. The first one is manually add employees to this pay run. This option will create a pay run based on the information you have entered above, but the pay run will have no employees in it. You can then just add the employees you need to process a payment for. The next option, Create Pay Runs with Empty Pays, will again create a pay run based on the information you have entered above, and all the employees that are attached to that pay schedule will populate the pay run, but they will all have empty pays. You can then enter the payments for the employees you need to. This is a handy option if you would like to add bonuses to all your employees. Any employees remaining in the pay run with nil earnings will drop off once the pay run has been finalised. Once the pay run details have been configured, you can click on Create. This is what your created pay run looks like. You can see here the pay schedule and pay period dates in the top left corner. You then have the relevant pay run tabs across the top here. The Actions tab is one I will come back to in a moment. The Filter tab will allow you to filter the pay run to show only certain employees in the view. The pay run can be filtered by any of these options or by the employee name. Then you may see the Warnings tab. If there are warnings in the pay run, it's always a good idea to make sure you do click on this tab and look at the warnings. Some may not require any action from you, but if they do, there will generally be a link to follow to fix the issue. You can ignore some warnings, and if you want to dismiss the warning, you can click on the little X at the end of the warning line. Back here on the Actions tab, you can see the Finalize option. So once the pay run is complete, you can finalize it. At this point, you also have the option to delete the pay run. Once a pay run has been finalized, there is no option to delete the pay run or make any adjustments. And you will also need to be aware that if you do delete a pay run, this cannot be restored or recovered, so make sure you are confident when deleting any pay runs. There is, however, an option to unlock a pay run after it's been finalized so you can make adjustments. I will show you how to do this in a moment. And you also need to be aware that you can't unlock a pay run if there has been automated super payments made, which includes super contributions from that pay run. The next option here is the Pay Run Actions button. Here you have a couple of other tasks available in the created pay run. You have the option to add a message, add employees, adjust the pay period, import timesheets, export and import the pay run. The Recalculate Pay Run option is handy if you make any business level changes that require data to be changed within a pay run. For example, you might change the loading percentage in a pay category or whether or not leave will accrue when a certain pay category is used. If you make these changes and want the pay run data to be adjusted accordingly, the Recalculate option will do this. Note that this is applicable for business level changes, not employee level changes. For example, if you change the hourly rate of an employee, the Recalculate option will not work. In that case, you'll need to exclude the employee from the pay run before making the change and then re-include them. Additionally, this method will only work if the pay run is the employee's most current pay run. For example, if you need to change pay run data from 3 pays ago, you will need to unlock each pay run starting from the most recent, going back to the one in question. You can then exclude the employee and re-include them. Once you are happy with the data, you can then finalize that pay run and the other more recent pay runs. There are a couple of reports you can access. The Reports option allows you to download and view the 2 most common payroll reports, the Audit Report and the Pay Run Variance Report. This option allows you to view the draft reports before the pay run is finalized. And there are a lot of other reports that you are able to view via the Reports page. However, these reports will show data from finalized pay runs only. The next button will allow you to view draft pay slips before you finalize the pay run. Be aware these will differ from the actual pay slips for the fact that bank and super details are not shown on the draft pay slips. The next tab here is the Leave Requests tab. If there are any leave requests in the business that have not been applied, you'll see them here. The first employee here, Brandon Mensley, has applied for leave without pay in April, and this pay run is a May pay run. The reason the leave request is still showing is because the leave has not been applied. If the employee decided not to take the leave in April and you want to stop this mention coming into every pay run, you can mark as applied manually. This means in the next pay run we won't see this request anymore. The next leave request belongs to Brandon also, an annual leave request from the 25th to the 26th of May. We do want to apply this to the pay run, so we are going to click the Apply option here. The system will give you the option to override the hours here. I'm not going to because the full 15.2 hours do belong in this pay period. But say there is a leave request that spanned over 2 different pay runs. You can change this to apply part of the leave, and in the next pay run you can apply the remainder of the leave. I'm going to go ahead and apply the leave, and this label will change to applied. If we then go ahead and look at that employee, we will see how the leave has applied. We can see the leave taken line, 15.2 hours for annual leave. This note tells us the dates of the leave and how many units have applied, along with the available hours. You will now notice that there are 3 lines. This line here, the permanent ordinary hours for 38 hours, this is his usual earnings line. What the system then does is takes away 15.2 hours from his usual pay category, permanent ordinary hours, and allocates the 15.2 hours to the annual leave taken line. The end result is still that he is being paid his usual 38 hours. However, this method allows reporting to split the permanent ordinary hours and the annual leave taken hours. If your employee uses timesheets, it will not look like this. This is because an employee that uses timesheets wouldn't be expected to have already hours submitted for any leave taken. So what the system will do is there will be one earnings line for the leave taken, and the other earnings lines can be there for any timesheets that the employee submits for time worked. Now, if we look at the pay run results as a whole, we will see that there are the pay run details for the included employees. You will see the employees' names listed down the side and all of the headings for the included information across the top here. I will draw your attention to one of these headings, which is for the expenses column. If an employee has incurred a work-related expense and they are being reimbursed for this, the figure for that amount will appear in this column. But because expenses are a reimbursement and not an earnings, this amount will not be included in the net earnings at the end here. When you go to actually pay the employee, you will need to make sure you include both the expenses figure and the net figure to give you the total you need to pay the employee. If you're using an ABA file, both of these amounts will be included, but if you're paying your employees any other way, you will need to make sure you include both amounts in the total. So for example, let's add an expense request for employee Andrea. Click on her name to expand the file. Click on that blue Actions button. Select Add Expense. Select the expense category. I'm going to enter $100 and save. You will see Andrea's net earnings remain the same, and the $100 now appears in the expenses column. Looking at our new employee Alice, we can see that she has come through with total hours of 0. Although we did select for her work week to be 38 hours a week, we also selected that she is going to use timesheets. Without timesheets being approved and imported, there won't be any earnings added automatically to the pay run for her. If the employee's circumstances change and they want to be paid by default certain hours in the pay run, you can do that. If you click this pencil icon to the right of the employee's name, this handy shortcut will take you straight to their employee file. All the pay run settings that we need are listed under the pay run defaults page. You'll notice this setting here, pay these earnings by default in a pay run. If we click this box here, the system will actually remind us that we have selected for this employee to use timesheets, And selecting this box as well, there may be earnings that may be doubled up. Once I update the timesheet setting to do not use timesheets, or even use timesheets for exceptions only, e.g. overtime, that warning will disappear and the system each weekly pay run will automatically include 38 hours per week for Alice. We'll click save and return to the pay run. Because we have made changes to the employee file and the pay run is already open, those changes will not be transferred to the pay run easily. For those changes to apply to this pay run, we can exclude the employee from the pay run. Once we have excluded her, you will see that her name will appear like this, and the system will say that she's been excluded from this pay run. If we include her in the pay run, it will now be using the new settings and the 38 hours will appear in the pay run by default. As I mentioned before, you can see all the employees listed down the side here. If we click on one of the employees' names, this will expand their earnings so we can see the details of those earnings. Some of the detail here includes the pay category, location, number of hours, and the hourly rate the employee is being paid. Below this is the leave accruals for the employee. You'll remember we selected the pay category, permanent ordinary hours, which is set to accrue leave. So here you can see the types of leave this employee is accruing and the amounts of each type of leave. You also have the option here, leave balances. This option will show you the balance of each leave type, and this balance will include any leave that has accrued in this pay run. The next option here is the Actions button. This is a very handy one to be aware of with a number of actions available. Here you can do things like add earnings. This is handy for paying earnings that are a one-off instance like overtime. To do this, you would click on the Add Earnings option and you can see that has created another earnings line. You would then just pop in the required detail for this extra earnings line. For example, here I will select an overtime pay category, enter the number of hours, and then click on Save. We can see these earnings have been added to the employee's total. Some of the other options on the Actions button are add a lump sum payment, which you can use for paying bonuses or commissions, calculating a gross payment from a net figure, add an expense, and make a deduction. You can use the Add a Deduction option to add in a one-off salary sacrifice to super deduction for the employee. If you click on this option, you will see it creates a deduction line where you can then just enter the detail for the deduction. For this example, I will select the salary sacrifice super deduction category, and then you'll need to select a payment option. Just note that when you are setting up a salary sacrifice super deduction, you will need to make sure the deduction is always paid to a super fund. There are system default deduction categories, and these are already configured to pay RESC directly to a super fund. This ensures that the deduction is reported correctly at the end of year as RESC, and also to ensure the payment appears in the super reports for when you go to actually pay the super. You can enter any notes and the amount for the deduction and then save. Once you've saved this, you will notice back at the top here that the employees' totals have changed again. You can see the gross is the same, but the pre-tax deduction is in this field here and the taxable amount has been reduced. Back on the Actions button, some of the other options are to accrue leave and take leave. You can adjust leave, PAYG and super. You can import timesheets, and this is also where you would terminate or exclude an employee from the pay run if necessary. You can also recalculate an employee's earnings if you have made any business level changes, such as changes to the pay category, remembering that if you have made changes at an employee level, such as the employee's pay rate, the recalculate option will not work. If you click on the employee's name again, this will close up that expanded view. The last things I'll mention are these three icons here next to the employee's name. The first one is the option to mark the employee as complete. If you have a large payroll and you want to go through the employees and check them off, you can click on this option so that at a quick glance you can see which employees have been completed. The second option is related to pay run tasks. Pay run tasks can be set up at business level here and may include little reminders that you can use within a pay run to remind yourself that certain things need to be completed. There are pay run tasks associated with all these employees. When I click on this icon, it will tell me what the pay run task is I need to remember. Once you mark these tasks as complete, that icon will disappear. The last icon is the little pencil icon. If you click on this, it will take you to the employee's details page straight from the pay run. Okay, so that covers all the detail in the pay run, so all that's left to do now is to finalize it. We can click on the Finalize Pay Run button here. You will then see this pop up where you will need to configure the payslip and notification options. The first option, to create the pay event. I'm going to select to create this at a later date so we don't get taken off to the STP lodgement screen. The next part is for the payslips. Publishing the payslips for employees is making them available for the employee to be able to access and view or download. You have the first option here, which is to not publish the payslips. The second option will publish the payslips straight away. If you select this option, you will then also need to configure whether or not the employees will be notified that their payslips are available. The last option gives you the ability to publish the payslips at a time in the future. For example, if you want to finalize your pay run on a Friday, but you don't want your employees to be able to access their payslips until the following Monday, you can set this up here by entering the required date and time. And again, also configure if you want the employees to be notified. I'll also just mention at this point that if you have elected to publish the payslips but not send them notifications, the employee won't receive their SMS or email to let them know the payslips is available, but they will still be able to log into the employee self-service portal or WorkZone app and view or download their payslip. I'm going to select to make payslips available to employees now and to send notifications to employees. Report packs. If reports are configured to run, you are able to select the report packs from the available checkboxes. This option will not show if you do not have report packs configured. Once these options have been configured, you can then just click on Finalize. This will finalize the pay run and publish the payslips if this is what you had selected. And now this is what your finalized pay run will look like. You can see here a few things have changed. You no longer have the option to delete the pay run. And if you do need to unlock the pay run for any reason, you can now do this from the Pay Run Actions tab. Remembering that you can only do this if automated super payments haven't been made from the pay run. You still have the reports available and the payslips option where you can download the payslips if you need to print them off or resend. The option to download the journals will be there if you don't have a direct integration with a journal service, which I will go into more detail about a little later. And lastly, the option to create a pay event ready for lodgement with the ATO. We will go back to the payroll dashboard now, and I'll show you a couple of things here that have changed. Looking at the employee we added earlier, we can see that the last time they were paid is now showing the date of the pay run we just processed. And then on the pay runs tab, you can see at the top of the list the pay run we just processed and some of the information for that pay run. It's also worth noting that the paid date of a pay run is what will determine the month this data will be included in for most reporting purposes. Okay, so that has completed the second part of the presentation today. In the next part of the webinar, we're going to look at a few of the key business level settings on the Payroll Settings tab. The first one we will look at is Payment Files. This is where you can go to set up any details for ABA file settings if you are wanting to pay your employees using an ABA file. The second tab here is BPay file settings. This is where you can set up multiple BPay accounts if needed, and then you choose which account you're going to use. The ATO settings page. This is where you can enable the payroll file for electronic lodgement to the ATO. You will need to fill in the details on the ATO supplier settings tab and then on the electronic lodgement and STP tab. You can click the Enable the Electronic Lodgement button in order to be taken to the STP registration wizard. You won't see this on this file because it's already been enabled. This allows you to enter the required business details, show you how to register the software ID with the ATO, and enable the payroll software for the electronic lodgement of STP information to the ATO. The superannuation page. Earlier when I showed you the employer nominated fund that was available for selection on the employee super funds page, this is where you can set that up. You can add as many default funds as you like by using the Add option here. There is also an option to reassign super fund details for employees in bulk. Pay schedules. This is where you can set up any extra pay schedules that you may need based on the 3 available schedules: weekly, fortnightly, and monthly. The pay schedule is also where you can configure the warnings you'll receive within the pay run. This can be done from this link here. You are also able to configure the pay run finalization settings here. Doing so will set the default options each time you finalize a pay run, although these can be edited if needed when you're actually finalizing a pay run as opposed to having to come back into this screen. Another feature is pay run automation. You can set up different parts of a pay run to be automated, or you can have the entire pay run automated. You can configure this by clicking on this link here. The Journals page. If you are using QuickBooks, you won't see the Journals option because the system is fully integrated with the QuickBooks Journal service already. Otherwise, from here you can connect to one of the Journal services we have a direct integration with, or you can select the File Export option. Once you have connected to a Journal service, this link here will take you to the Chart of Accounts page where you can configure all the GL accounts you would like your payroll journals to map to. Manage Users page. You can add as many users to the payroll file as you like. There are two types of users, a full access user and a restricted access user. A full access user has access to all components of the payroll file, and a restricted user can be configured using a variety of permissions. These include employee group access, location access, reporting access, clock me in access, and STP approval access. To explain briefly the differences, we will take a look at this restricted user here. With employee group access, you can choose an employee or group of employees the user can access based on criteria required that make up this group. You can include more than one criteria by clicking on Add Another Criteria and then choose whether the multiple criteria must match all or any of the criteria selected. If you set up a restricted user after the 9th of March 2021, you will be able to configure whether the user should have access to employee details and if so, the level of access. This configuration is to be done for each location and/or employee group access assigned to the restricted user. These options are listed under the employee category within the user's access setup and include no access to employee details, view employee details, edit basic employee details, and edit all employee details. With location access, you choose a location the user can access. With this type of permission, you can select a location and all its sub-locations to be included. This setup makes it easier for managers to focus on the location they are responsible for. Reporting access provides the user with access to one, some, or all reports. It can be restricted based on employee group and/or location access. If you leave the No Restriction on Reporting Data option box unticked, it will apply any employee group location restrictions that the user has. Pay run approval. Payroll permission allows you to give the user access to be an STP pay event approver. The last user permission, Clock Me In, provides the user with access to one, some, or all of the kiosks in the business. This permission is only relevant to businesses that use the time and attendance feature, which is available on the Plus Advanced plan. The last two pages of the business settings that I'm going to draw your attention to is the Employee Portal Access and the Leave Allowance template page. We discussed the purpose of these earlier when adding a new employee, but this is the page that you can navigate to if you're wanting to add new templates to suit your business needs. If you have an award installed in the business, you can select the award from the drop-down to view the associated leave allowance templates. If you select your leave allowance template, these are the ones that exist separate to the award. It is also where you go if you are needing to make any changes to existing templates. The beauty about having templates is that if you need to make any changes, you only need to update the actual template, and when you save those changes, it will be applied to any employee that is attached to the template. The final feature that we are going to discuss as part of the Getting Started guide is employee self-service. Employees can be given access to the employee self-service portal, which is available via an internet browser, and WorkZone, which is available by downloading the WorkZone app to a smartphone. Both environments allow users to perform tasks such as edit personal information, profile pictures and bank accounts, as well as apply for leave and expenses. They can also submit timesheets and enter dates when they are unavailable for work. Within WorkZone, They also have the option to utilize the clock in out features, which allows them to clock in and out of shifts and breaks with the simple click of a button. Once they clock out at the end of the shift, the system will enter this data as a timesheet ready to be approved by a manager. In order for employees to have access to self-service, they need to be set up for portal access. On this page, you will see a list of all the employees and the current status of their employee portal access. The key statuses are eligible for access. This indicates the employee has supplied an email address and can be granted access to the employee portal. No emails supplied. The employee hasn't supplied an email address and cannot be granted access to the employee portal. And lastly, access granted. The employee has supplied an email address and access has been granted to the employee portal. If you wish to grant access to one or more employees, simply select the checkbox next to their name and click the Grant Access button. If you wish to revoke access, click on the checkbox next to the employee's name and then click the Revoke Access button. If you wish to edit or add an email address for an employee, simply click on the pencil icon in the email column and enter the email address for the employee. Once an email address has been supplied, you can grant that employee access. Before we move on to what it looks like for the employee side of things, this settings page here controls everything an employee can and cannot do via the employee portal and work zone. It covers things such as what type of details they can edit, bank accounts, super funds, profile pictures, whether or not they can apply for leave and expenses, if you want them to be able to complete the employee satisfaction survey, if they can set their own availability and the criteria for setting that unavailability. This checkbox here refers to employees viewing approved leave. If you select this, employees will be able to view everyone's leave, not just their own. This next drop-down box determines what type of permissions employees have when it comes to timesheets. Read this very carefully as it refers to whether or not they can create and edit or just view and what types of timesheets those permissions will apply to. These options here apply to the clock in out feature within Work Zone. If you haven't enabled employees to use this, you will not see any of these further options. By ticking this box here, you can select further permissions. This last box here is whether or not employees will receive a notification when details, personal, bank account, superannuation details have been updated. You can find more information about the other business setting pages and their functions by contacting your payroll provider or searching their knowledge base of articles. Now I'll show you what it looks like from the employee portal side. On the left side dash, the employee will see a variety of options depending on the permissions given at business level. For the purposes of this video, I have given the employee access to all available self-service options. They can be accessed on the side dash, and in addition, the leave, timesheets and payslips can be accessed by clicking into each main section here. The lower half of the screen allows for the employee satisfaction survey if this has been enabled at the business level. If you do enable this, there is a report to extract employee responses to this. Next to that is the calendar in which employees can view public holidays, paydays if enabled, and approved leave. If the employee doesn't want to see leave related to other employees, they can click the toggle here to hide those entries. If we take a look at Work Zone, you'll find the same functions. You'll see the employee satisfaction survey, We can see the timesheets, expenses, leave balances. If there are any rostered shifts, they will appear here, and we can see the last pay slip. At the bottom of the screen, you will see the home button, which is this screen. The timesheet icon will bring up the timesheet screen. We can view expenses, and lastly, the employee file. Going back to the home screen, if enabled at business level, employees can also have the option to clock in out. Once you clock into a shift, confirm the clock in, and the option will then change to allow the next process of either clock out of the shift or start a break. We can select to clock out and confirm clock out. Once the final clock out for the shift has been performed, these times will be sent as a timesheet ready for approval for a manager. To view these, the manager goes into the Approved Timesheets page, which is accessed via the Manage Employees tab, or on the left side dash if you have that, by going to the Timesheets option. Managers can also approve timesheets in WorkZone. This is just a quick look at both the Employee Portal and WorkZone. The employee self-service platforms give both employees and managers more control and independence over a multitude of tasks. That concludes the Getting Started guide for today. I hope this has been helpful, and if you have any further questions, I encourage you to contact your payroll provider. Thank you very much.